Now, with that being said, it really leads ourselves to the question of anything that you do in regards to optimizing your site. You really need to be asking yourself, what does your website need to do to build its reputation on freshness, depth, diversity of quality inbound links, and higher user engagement? Any strategy that you implement, that is the key question you need to be asking it. Does it fulfill any of those 5 things mentioned here of freshness, depth, diversity of quality inbound links, and higher user engagement? If it doesn't do that, you're likely wasting your time. So, with that being known, how do we take advantage of that? First thing, and this is probably the most technical thing that I will recommend to you today, but it is extremely important. And I'm also going to give you resources on how to take advantage of that. All websites should be thinking about structured data and ultimately schema. If you haven't heard it before, you should at this point. So what is structured data and why is it important to SEO? Okay, so what structured data is, and this is basically setting up your code in a certain way that it makes it faster and easier for search engines to crawl, but it also allows them to use your content in different ways in the search results. And this is why it's so important, but also advantageous for SEO. So like, for example, I'm really hot on recipes with SEO right now because there's a lot going on there. And you guys see it all the time. Probably right now, everybody's given their life story is in regards to before they actually give you the recipe. Oh, this is my grandmother's recipe. I used to go there as a child for her chicken cutlet recipe. I love chicken cutlet, so forth. And then you actually get the recipe. I don't think that works. I think what they're doing, probably what is working more is things like schema. So like this screenshot right here I just pulled up was, so all those recipes weren't, written out like that, okay? What happened is through the use of schema and structured data, it's allowing the search engines to pull that information in, And we'll talk briefly about rich snippets as well, where somebody asks a question and through structured data can fill that question, and that helps gain you web traffic. Now, there's a big debate there, and that once again could be a whole other webinar as far as Google, walling off the garden, so to say, because by them having more in-search results, somebody doesn't have to go to the website they're pulling that data from to get the answer. They have it all in search. But with that being said, people that are showing up in rich snippets that are doing that do gain more traffic. So structured data is extremely important for your SEO. Now, there's probably a lot of people on this call, this webinar, who are not technical people. Don't worry about it. First off, it's always best if you're involved with SEO for your organization and you're not regularly educating yourself and looking at Google documentation, you need to be, because they give you a lot of the answers. They want you to follow their rules. So, so if you want to learn a little bit more about structured data, here's a great link. And once again, we're going to give you this presentation, so don't worry if you miss anything. But also, taking a little bit further, is I found some great resources for anybody that wants to start researching structured data, rich snippets, schema markup. It's all here. The first article is a great primer for anybody who's really at the beginner spot for structured data and understanding that and how to optimize your site for it. That's a great post. Now, as you go down, it gets a little denser, but this is some great information that I highly recommend you guys look at. And if you're not familiar with structured data, if you're not using it on your site, you absolutely should be. But then the last thing I want to say in regards to structured data, if you're using WordPress, for example, there are plugins for structured data, which then makes it even easier, So, structured data is something you definitely should be using. Don't be intimidated by it if you're not a technical person. And once again, if you're using like a site, like if you're using a backend like WordPress, and I just can't speak to other backends, but I know for a fact WordPress has plugins for structured data and schema and rich snippets like that. So, which makes it even easier. You don't even have to follow this documentation. So that's structured data. Next, I want to talk a little bit about page freshness. And the reason I thought it was so important to talk about page freshness is that it is extremely important, but way too many people have misconceptions about what page freshness is at the end of the day. So why is it important? It's been known for years, that Google prioritizes new and frequently updated content over old and outdated web pages. But that doesn't mean just changing the headline and date periodically. You got to do a lot more than that. And I'll give you a trick that we used to do in like 2007, 2008, RSS feeds. We would set up RSS feeds on a site. It would look like we were updating content on the site on a regular basis. That doesn't work anymore, so nobody write that down and start doing that. But because it is much deeper than that. Page freshness isn't just about logging in, updating the date, changing the headline. Google's pretty smart. That's not going to work. But what does page freshness mean? First off, kind of contradicting myself, but not contradicting myself. If it makes sense, adding a date does help. Okay, I've run tons of tests on content sites where we just when we posted it that day and added a date, it does help you. It also helps your user experience, because if you're researching something and you see, June 13th, 2019 versus June 13th, 2012, what are you probably going to be more engaged with? And Google's making that same type of calculation. But then what you'll also see a lot is that a lot of organizations go in, and which they should be doing, and periodically update their content. And you'll see updated, June 13th, 2019. And that's a good thing, because it shows, hey, we're going back in as things change, we're updating that content. Once again, valuable to the reader. It's current, it's fresh. But once again, just going back in every couple months and changing the headline and changing the date isn't going to do it. But I will tell you right now, and I've seen it quite a few times, where it's a content site where they implement dates, they do see a bounce in their organic search traffic. But once again, it's about really actually updating that content at the end of the day, going back in, editing it. And I kind of touched upon this before. You need to ask yourself that, because, with the news site, with the current events site, it's pretty straightforward as far as having fresh content. If you're more, going back to that spark plug analogy, how much does the technology of spark plugs change at the end of the day? But documentation does change at the end of the day. Every year, I'm sure that your organization or the organization you buy from does update their product specs, does update their user guides, does update their manuals. And are you linking to that manual from 1998? Really look at those types of things. It's good in general just to look over all your content on your site and see where you're at, because you'll be surprised. You're going to dig up some stuff that's like, holy cow, 2008, and that is hurting you, okay? So even for sites that are not information, it is important. And then, going about what we talked, when was the last time you conducted keyword research? Trends change. Things people were searching for in your space, they might not be searching for now. Things that they weren't, they are now. Terminologies change. So it's always good to do a little bit of keyword research, what I call like a keyword research, checkup, see where the trends are. Because that keyword research you did a year, 2 years ago, there might be more opportunities, and there might be terms that were heavily searched that aren't searched anymore. And keyword research, especially when you have a starting point, like you already have a keyword matrix put together from a year or 2 years ago, is a pretty quick exercise.